had an enormous regard for this man because of his character. They're cut from the same cloth. They both share an absolute abhorrence for the abuse of power. My dad used to say that the greatest sin that anyone could commit was the abuse of power, whether it's economic power, political power, or whether it's physical power. And the cardinal of all sins was a man raising his hand to a woman or a child. Look at Roy's record. Like my son, he's taken on the big banks, on big pharma, on payday lenders, taking on child predators. And folks, if you ever wonder why they're spending so much money against Roy, why there's so much money, is they know he'll stand up to any abuse of power in this state. I've worked with an awful lot of governors. Working on everything since vice president, since the Recovery Act, or the natural disasters, or trying to get infrastructure passed, education. And being governor, as you all know, is a very serious job. And you've seen how governors set the tone for their states and lead on everything from early education to minimum wage. Roy's going to be that kind of governor, but you don't have that kind of governor now. No, but seriously, no one has to know anything about this race anywhere around the country to know that North Carolina's reputation for being progressive, for being a state of education, for being a state that in fact valued equal rights and equal access. I'm not just talking about the House bill passed. I'm talking about the right to vote. I'm talking about treating everyone with dignity. Right now, North Carolina is always on the cusp. It's always on the cusp. It is the leader and has been the leader for the last 35 years in the South. It's the leader moving progressive notions forward, basic notions that everyone's entitled to be treated with dignity. But every once in a while, you get this backwash that comes back. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. And look what's happened. Look what's happened. You know, Roy understands that one of the hallmarks of the state of North Carolina has been advancing education. Whether it's through, you have an incredible state universities, whether it's paying teachers what they deserve. Roy realizes the well-being of our children, particularly poor children, rests on health care, which is why he wants to expand the federal government's coverage of Medicaid. Imagine, we're not going to give poor children access to Medicaid because these guys don't like the Affordable Care Act? I could go on, but the point is that his policies, his values, how he will govern, is going to restore the reputation of this state in a way that hadn't happened in a while. And look, while folks are frustrated by the gridlock in Washington, they're embarrassed by governors who don't well represent them. That's what's happening in North Carolina. I don't know the current governor, and I'm not questioning the man's character, but I sure in the devil question his judgment and his value set. He has the same judgment and value set that Donald Trump has. This is not your father's Republican Party, man. This is a different breed of cat. All you got to do is ask the Chamber of Commerce who's Republican what they say what HB 2 has done to this state. Cost you over 1,300 jobs so far, $285 million so far, as the Gov says, the soon-to-be Gov says that, and that's what you know of. You know of. Just the loss of the NBA All-Star Games, $100 million loss but it's jobs. Your sitting governor oversaw the passage of what the lower courts have ruled in what is voter suppression, quote, blatantly discriminatory bill that targeted African Americans with surgical precision. But look at the words they used. This isn't a generic rejection of a law. It pointed out what the motive of the law was and said targeted with surgical precision. And your sitting governor, he supports the man who refused to acknowledge the loss of a Gold Star family, who attacked the Gold Star family, refused to denounce the Trump at rallies, including the assault that took place in Fayetteville. Look, your sitting governor, like Mr. Trump, says he cares about the middle class. He talks about improving education. Isn't it amazing how all these guys have gotten religion? You know, isn't it kind of amazing? Everybody's for the middle class. Yet I can't think of a thing he's done or Trump will do that in any way will benefit the middle class. They have a different value set than we do. They really do. They somehow think that those of us who come up in normal neighborhoods or working class neighborhoods, somehow we don't have the same dreams or aspirations that they do. Somehow we're not the same. Somehow, you know, we can just figure out how to do it, like Donald Trump saying. And I don't even think he meant it when he talked about post-traumatic stress and saying, you guys can overcome it. You know what I mean? But by the way, your current sitting senator has actually surprised me in what he has been unwilling to speak out against and what he speaks for. So you not only need to elect Roy as governor, but you need Deborah. You heard her. I can't improve on what she said. Well, look. No one gave her a chance when she first got in this race, remember? But look at where she is today. She's gone out there, and she did what she said she'd do. She listened to the people of North Carolina, from the mountains to the coast. She hears you guys. She gets it. In the State House, she's the one that pushed through, as she pointed out, campaign finance reform, requiring companies and trade groups to disclose their donations and political activities in the state. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been trying to do that. We've been trying to do that since Citizen United passed in the United States Congress. But her opponent votes repeatedly against efforts on disclosure. Remember when Republicans used to be for disclosure? No, for real. I served there a long time. Ever wonder why Mitch McConnell, as I said, and the special interest groups have spent over $20 million against Deborah in this race? Throughout her career as a lawyer, as a state representative, she stood by survivors of domestic violence. She's toughened the penalties on perpetrators. Her opponent voted again. I wrote the Violence Against Women Act. I did it with my own, as my sister Kidley says, my own paw. I'm the guy that wrote it. And let me tell you something. Every time we had to reauthorize it, like the last time, her opponent voted against continuing the Violence Against Women Act. I mean, what? Look, I really don't get it. I really don't get it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the guy that wrote the legislation about rape kits. And we trained forensic nurses, we trained police officers to take all the information they possibly can at a scene of a rape. And they put together these rape kits. But they're backlogged, sitting up on shelves. And in fact, if we tested every rape kit, it's estimated we could settle 70% of the rape cases that exist. And the one thing I know about for doing it my whole life, the one thing a woman who's been victimized needs to recover is everybody else know she wasn't lying, know that what she said was true. So we pushed to give $150 million to the states so they could take those rape kits off the shelf and test them and close cases, give closure to so many women who are still suffering as a consequence of what happened to them. Her opponent voted against that. The money was going to the states. Deborah understands that the right to vote is sacred. It's the most fundamental right. All other rights flow from it. That's why, as she said, she voted and introduced legislation to make it easier to register and vote. Same-day registration, same-day voting. One of the most progressive moves in all the country. Her opponent, though, supported that most discriminating voting law in the country, considered the worst one since Jim Crow. Okay? And like the current governor, the current senator supports Donald Trump and what he says and he does. He also said he'd even fight to keep the Supreme Court vacant for 4 more years if Hillary wins. Look, guys, The good news is, I know you're probably not going to believe this, but most of the Republicans in the Senate are reasonable. I really mean, no, they really are. But here's what happens. They're totally intimidated. They're totally intimidated by the far right, or whatever you want to call it. It's not even the far right. They're totally intimidated by the Koch brothers and others because, for example, when they blocked the hearing on Merrick Garland, who was a chief judge of the D.C. Circuit Court, who they had praised for 8 years as one of the great jurists, when they blocked it, I got on the phone. If you notice, anytime there is a conflict up in the Congress, I get sent up by the president. Well, because I actually respect the Congress. I was proud to have served in the Senate all those years. I hate seeing what's happening to it. So I got on the phone. I called 7 Republican senators who are friends of mine, and they all said, Joe, I know you're right. I know this is the wrong thing to do, blocking this hearing. But, Joe, if I do, they'll come down on me like a ton of bricks. They'll come in, they'll primary me, Joe. They'll pour millions of dollars into my race. Now, granted, they should have the courage to step up. But the point is, the reason why we got to elect Deborah and the reason why we got to get back to Senate, it's going to free about 35 serious Republican senators to start doing the right thing again. Because when they're not in control, the pressure is not on them like it is now. So we can change this. We not only elect and get a majority of Democrats, I promise you, you will see things begin to change with our Republican friends who know better. Folks, we're just 7 days out. 7 days out. 6, really, the way I count as a candidate, because the day's almost over. In the most important election in any of your lives, whether you're a millennial or whether you're my age, we know that they're going to throw the last 6 days everything but the kitchen sink at Hillary and at our candidates. And they're doing it all. But we can't take our eye off the ball. We have to focus on what's at stake. Everything's on the ballot. Education is on the ballot. Healthcare is on the ballot. National security is on the ballot. It's about our place in the world. It's about how we're viewed. It's about our physical security. It's about our economy. It's literally on the docket. Look, I'm supposedly an expert on foreign policy and national security. An expert, an expert's anyone from out of town with a briefcase. I don't have a briefcase. But here's what I do know. I've met every major world leader in the last 35 years, without exception, only because I was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee and I'm vice president who speaks for the president when I go around the world. I've traveled over 1,150,000 miles just as vice president at the president's request to go meet with various heads of state. 2 things I've seen change. 2 things. Number 1, I can sit down whether it was with President Xi in Beijing, or whether it's President Santos in Colombia, or whether it's President Hollande in France. And I can sit down and work out an agreement and shake hands. This is my word is abiding. Shake hands. And here's what they say to me in one form or another. They'll look at me and say, we have an agreement, but can you deliver? Now, they don't doubt me or the president, but can you deliver? They understand our system. They understand the dysfunction in the United States Congress is debilitating. And so they look and they say, because any deal requires them to take some chances. They say, can you deliver? Imagine that. I was asked to go by the president to go down and meet with the Prime Minister of Australia because there was another election. He didn't keep the same majority. He had to form a new cabinet. The issue is China, the South China Sea, what's going on in our rebalancing the Pacific, et cetera. So I got on the plane and went down, and then I went to New Zealand to meet with the Prime Minister. I got a call when I was there. I got a call from the President, former Secretary of Defense of Latvia, one of the Baltic nations. And they said, you've got to come. You've got to come to the Baltic states because our people don't think America is ready to keep its commitment in NATO, Article 5, that if we're attacked by Russia, that you'll defend us because of what Trump said. No, remember what he said. You're going to check and see it. I give you my word. I got on a plane and I flew all the way to the Baltic states. You know what they wanted me to do? Not only meet with the leader of Latvia, but Estonia and Lithuania. I met for the better part of a morning with all 3 of the leaders, and then they wanted me to make an address, which I did, to the entire Baltic nations. Like, you know, almost like the State of the Union kind of address you'd make in a country, to assure them that we keep our commitments, that it's a sacred commitment we made. Ladies and gentlemen, think of what Trump said. Think of what he said in the debate. While Putin, who he is just, I don't even think he realizes how much he's playing into Russia's hands. I mean, if he does, it's outrageous. If he doesn't, it's outrageous. But here's the deal, guys. He says on national television, and those of you who've traveled around the world, you know, the only people who watch the presidential debates as much as Americans are everybody else in the world. No, 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 no. I promise you, because what happens here matters to them. It matters to them a lot. So, imagine the message. Imagine what he's playing into Putin's hand when he says that although 17 national security agencies have said that Russia hacked in to the Democratic National Committee and Putin was behind it, he said they don't know what they're talking about. What does that say about us? A leader of one of the major political parties playing into the hands of a thug named Putin, who in fact is saying we don't know what we're doing. God almighty. And then he goes on and says, I spent a lot of time in the Middle East. I spent a lot of time dealing with ISIS. Ladies and gentlemen, the plan to take down ISIS in Mosul in Iraq was long in the planning, and it's working. This guy says for the whole world to listen,